Thank you. Hello, everyone. My name is Jelena Griscenko, and I work in the Compliance and Enforcement Unit within the Charities Regulator. So my presentation is about the Charities Governance Code. So first of all, I just want to give you some context around the development of the code and why it's important to you as a charity trustees, but also to the charity sector as a whole. Good governance in charities is more important than ever. Now, all it takes is one scandal, even in a small charity, and public trust and confidence levels drop. In fact, public trust and confidence levels in charities peaked at around 75% in 2012, but dramatically dropped to below 50% in the intervening years because of a small number of charity scandals. So in order to look at the whole area of governance within charities, the Charities Regulator in March 2017 established a consultative panel on the governance of charities, and a key aspect of the panel's work was conducting public consultations. So the panel's report was published in April of last year. And the key recommendations included that the Charities Regulator should issue a governance code. The code should be principle-based, transparent, and developed in collaboration with the sector. So the Charities Governance Code was issued on the 7th of November of last year. As Sharon and Eamon have already mentioned, charity trustees have legal duties and responsibilities, and they must be aware of those duties and responsibilities, and they must understand the steps that they need to take to make sure that their charity is well governed. So the code is a support tool for charity trustees. It will not only inform you of your legal duties as charity trustees, but it sets out how you can meet those duties in the simplest way. Compliance with the code will reassure your donors and funders that their money is being managed by a well-run organization with good governance. And finally, good governance in charities is essential in maintaining public trust and confidence levels. The public trust is one of the major factors that affect their decision-making about supporting the work of charities, be it through donation of time or money. If that trust is not maintained, the whole organization and perhaps even the sector itself could suffer. So one of the key aims of the Charities Regulator is to increase public trust and confidence in the management and administration of charities. However, you as charity trustees have a role to play by practicing good governance standards within your charities. So the Charities Governance Code is structured around 6 principles of good governance, and this is a screenshot of the 6 principles within the code. So each principle is broken down into core standards that every charity in Ireland is expected to achieve. And for 5 of the 6 principles, there are also additional standards for more complex charities. So in total, there are 6 principles, 32 core standards, and 17 additional standards within the code. And I hope that at this stage, most of you are familiar with the 6 principles, but I'll go through them all very briefly. So principle 1, advancing charitable purpose. Charities must demonstrate that they advance their charitable purpose only, and it must be of public benefit. It reminds charity trustees of what they are there for. Principle 2 is about behaving with integrity. Charity trustees must behave with the highest standards of honesty, fairness, and independence. Principle 3 is about leading people. So the standards under this principle highlight that charities need to be clear about the roles of everyone working in the charity. And charity trustees are responsible for providing leadership to volunteers and employees. Moving on to principle 4, exercising control. No matter the size and complexity of your charity, charity trustees must abide by legal and regulatory requirements that are relevant to the work they do. Charity trustees are also responsible for the charity's funds and any other assets that it holds. The core standards under Principle 5 are all about the importance of Board of Charity Trustees working together, collectively, in an effective manner in order to make sure that their charity is achieving its objectives. And finally, Principle 6 is about being accountable and transparent to your stakeholders. Charity trustees should be willing to explain their actions to their stakeholders. And also, they should be willing to publish or make available key information about their charity. And I suppose abridged accounts have been mentioned quite a lot today. And filing abridged accounts will not go anyway towards increasing public trust and confidence in the sector. So in order to assist charities with the implementation of the Charities Governance Code, we developed the Charities Governance Code Toolkit, which provides guidance, materials, and templates for charity trustees. So if you go onto our website, you will find the link to the Charities Governance Code under the tab called Information for Charities. So if you click into that, it will take you to a page dedicated to the Charities Governance Code. So all the guidance materials can be found on that page. You will also find the Charities Governance Code and the compliance record form there as well. So the guidance documents are published under 5 separate headings. So, for example, under the charity trustee duties and roles, you will find a useful infographics that provides an overview of legal duties of charity trustees. There are a number of documents and templates in relation to minute taken and the role of the chairperson of the charity and the role of the secretary of a charity under the meetings and minutes. Under the planning and risk, you will find guidance on risk management, planning, charity communications. Under the recruitment and induction, there are guidance documents on codes of conduct, recruitment, induction, succession planning, and so on. I suppose just to mention that all these documents have been developed for smaller charities in mind. So they are all in plain English, and they provide lots of practical examples. And most of them are actually quite short, so please have a look at them all. And also there are a number of other documents on the website that Sharon has already mentioned, such as guidance on internal financial controls and fundraising. So they are also relevant for the code. So I'm going to spend the next few minutes going through some frequently asked questions on the Charities Governance Code. We did a Charities Governance Code survey in order to identify areas that concern people most. And these are 6 most common questions that people ask. So I'm going to go through each of those questions now in detail. So question 1, where do I start? So I suppose some of you have gone through the process and may be fully compliant with the codes, and some of you have not even started yet. So for those who haven't started, there are a few things you should do now. So first of all, read the code in full and get familiar with all of the standards within the code. Look at the guidance documents on our website. Review your existing governance standards and consider where you are doing things well, what are the areas for improvement, and what are the gaps. And hopefully, as you're doing this, you will find that you're already meeting most of the core standards within the code. As a starting point, ask yourself these basic questions. Do we hold regular trustee meetings? Are the minutes taken and all other formal decisions of the board properly recorded? As Sharon outlined in her presentation, this is one of the common issues within charities. And I cannot emphasize enough the importance of those meetings. Having regular, meaningful meetings where you're discussing the issues, agreeing a course of actions, and recording that decision is crucial to your role as a charity trustees. And this is something that you would be expected to be doing already. And for small, volunteer-only charities, this would be sufficient to meet the majority of the core standards within the codes. What are the existing policies and procedures and what's missing? I have already mentioned the Charities Governance Code Toolkit. You will find a number of sample policies there. You can also look at other charities and see what they have. You will find that a lot of charities publish their policies on their websites. But whatever templates you're using, make sure that they are relevant for your charity, and you should adapt them for your circumstances if needed. So question 2, am I a complex charity for the purposes of the Charities Governance Code? So charity trustees will need to decide whether the charity is complex or non-complex for the purposes of the code. If you are a non-complex charity, only core standards will apply to you. Complex charities will have to achieve all of the core standards and additional standards set out in the code. The code was purposely written without defining what charities should meet the additional standards. The diversity of the sector makes it hard to define charities as complex or non-complex. And the comply and explain approach to the code recognizes that diversity in the sector. So ultimately, the charity trustees of each organization are best placed to make the decision regarding what is right for their charity and whether their charity should meet some or all of the additional standards within the code. Think about what's appropriate for your charity at a given time. Charity trustees may base this decision on indicators such as charity's income and number of employees, for example, but it's not just about the size of your charity. You also need to consider the complexity of your activities. Are you working with vulnerable people? Are you operating overseas, or do you have a very large number of volunteers? You may be a small charity in terms of income, for example, but if you are working with vulnerable people, it will make you a more complex charity for the purposes of the code. I have included 2 simple examples here on this slide. I will not be going through them today, but you will be getting a copy of those slides after the event, so you can read through those examples in your own time. So the next question is in relation to the compliance record form. How do I complete it? How much detail to provide? What type of evidence should I reference? It may be easier if one person takes the responsibility for the completion of the form and driving this process forward. The compliance record form should be your working document, so we would recommend that the compliance record form is completed in meetings where the matters are discussed and updated as you go, instead of trying to complete it all at the end of the year. Otherwise, it will become a very difficult task for you. Think about what you are working on at the moment. Maybe you are developing a strategic plan, or maybe you are updating certain policies, or maybe implementing new policies. They are all relevant for the code. Keep it simple. A couple of bullet points will be sufficient. You don't have to set out what was discussed in meetings. This should be in your minutes. And if you can't meet all of the standards within the code, explain why. There may be a good reason for non-compliance with a particular standard within the code, but it's important that you have a discussion first and your decisions are properly documented. And the good explanation should be seen as being compliant with the code. And where a departure from a particular standard is intended to be limited in time, the explanation should indicate when the charity expects to comply with the standard. The type of evidence we expect also depends on the complexity of your charity. The minimum expected of all charities would be to hold regular meetings where your decisions and actions are properly documented. And as I already mentioned, for volunteer-only charities, this would be enough to evidence many of the core standards within the code. So simply reference the relevant minutes in the compliance record form. For example, core standard 1.3 requires you to agree an achievable plan for the year ahead. For very small charities, a separate documented plan may not be required. However, as a minimum, you should discuss and agree your plans and the resources required and record this in your board meeting minutes. And remember, you have the whole year to complete the form. So start in January and complete it as you go. And as I mentioned, if you leave it until the end, it will be a difficult task. The first year will be the hardest, but it will get easier once you get familiar with the form and have all your policies and procedures in place. Then it's all about reviewing it and refreshing it every year. And also, we will be publishing a completed sample compliance record form, so keep an eye on our website for that. So question 4, what are operational policies as required by Core Standard 3.4? So operational policies are clear, simple statements of how your charity intends to conduct its activities. They establish rules and processes that people must respect and follow. They include things like recruitment policies, risk management policy, conflict of interest policy, expenses policy, and so on. And again, policies don't need to be long and complicated. A couple of sentences may be all you need for some of them, but again, it depends on the complexity of your charity. So the next question 5, is from those charities that have already been in compliance with other governance code. So what they are asking is, does this mean that we have to redo all our policies to keep in line with the new Charities Governance Code? And the answer to that is no. If your charity is currently well governed, the Charities Governance Code may not require you to make any significant changes. What you've done so far is relevant for the Charities Governance Code. So go through any evidence that you have compiled for other codes and use this evidence to complete the compliance record form, and then see if there are any gaps. So next question, the last question, question 6, is do charity trustees who have been on the board for more than 9 years have to resign? Core Standard 5.5 under Principle 5, Working Effectively, requires charities to consider introducing term limits for charity trustees with a suggested maximum of 9 years in total. So this is a suggestion based on generally accepted standards of good practice. So if your governing document is silent on this, you should consider introducing term limits. And some of the reasons for having term limits include no matter how passionate the person is about the cause, it's important to ensure that a board's membership is reviewed on a regular basis and updated where skill gaps arise or required skills change over time. A person who resigns or is not reappointed to a board can still volunteer with the charity and serve on committees of the board, and so can continue to contribute to the work of the charity and its charitable purpose. And where a person has made a significant contribution to a charity by taking on a charity trustee role on its board in the past, it's important that he or she is encouraged to continue volunteering for the charity if possible. Charities should aim to have a diverse board of trustees, which consists of charity trustees with a range of backgrounds and experiences. And while term limits alone will not result in diversity, when combined with an overall focus by a charity on recruiting to ensure diversity, term limits can make it easier to bring in candidates with a variety of backgrounds and perspectives, which can help to invigorate the board. And also there may be reasons why your charity term limits are different. For example, a charity's governing document might provide for a different term limit. In addition, where a charity trustee's term exceeds 9 years, there may be a good reason for this. For example, your genuine attempts to recruit new board members have failed. In order to ensure continuity on the board and its work, it's recommended that the term limits are staggered, so that you do not have a situation where all of the board members, where the terms of all board members end at the same time. And we often hear about small charities struggle to find people willing to volunteer as charity trustees. So what can you do? As well as asking people you already know, consider advertising a vacancy on your charity's website, local notice boards or newsletters, colleges and universities, You can also contact your local volunteer center through Volunteer Ireland. So if you go onto their websites, which I have on the slide, you can check to see where your local volunteer centers or volunteer information services are. For example, Waterford has a volunteering information service which can be contacted on connect@volunteerwaterford.ie, and its website is www.volunteerwaterford.ie. Board Match Ireland is a registered charity which works through its online matching website to match people with charity board vacancies by reference to skills, locations, and charity focus. And again, they have a website. I have included all these details on the slide, and as I said, you will be getting copies of these slides, so you will have all those details. And I also referenced relevant guidance documents under the Charities Governance Code Toolkit that you can look at. So it's recruitment and induction of prospective charity trustees and guidance note on succession planning. So have a look at those as well. So here are some of the key days for you to note. So this year is a year of learning and preparation for charities. The Charities Governance Code Toolkit provides guidance notes and templates to assist charities and charity trustees to meet all of the core standards outlined in the code. Formal training for charity trustees is coming, but I don't have a date for you yet. But there are a few things you can do in the meantime. Get familiar with the code, look at our guidance and templates, look at other charities and see what they are doing. Other organizations, such as Carmichael, for example, have lots of useful podcasts and information on their website. And of course, you can always email us if you have any questions, and we will come back to you as soon as we can. 2020 will be the first year that registered charities are expected to comply with the code. As I mentioned, do not wait until December 2020 to complete the form. To make sure you do it properly, start early and take it step by step. Your compliance record form should be your working document. And remember, good governance is an ongoing process, so it's not a one-off exercise. And then 2021 will be the first year that registered charities are expected to report on their compliance with the codes. So it will be a statement on your annual report. You don't have to submit your compliance record form or any evidence to us, but you have to keep it on file because we will be doing spot checks, and we may also request those forms or evidence as part of our compliance work. So that's the end of the presentation. And on this slide, I have included a link to the Charities Governance Code page on our website. And there's also an email address for governance code, Charities Governance Code related queries. So you can email us with any questions you have. And you can also sign up to our email newsletter if you want to get email updates from the Charities Regulator. Thank you.